Welcome to the Next Issue podcast. We're a group of friends that love talking comics and all that it entails. We're based out of Dallas, so you'll hear us talk about how these comics make up a part of our daily lives, including our local comic shop, conventions, and other forms of entertainment. Welcome.
Welcome everyone to the Next Issue podcast. Daniel here. Welcome to our season premiere for 2021. Today's a very special episode. We actually have two creators on our show, and you guys know how excited we get when comic people want to talk to us. So let me introduce Howard Wong and Josh Stafford. You guys want to introduce yourselves? Let our audience know who it is, and then I'll introduce my co-host after that.
Sure thing. I'm Howard Wong, the co-writer of Damn Cursed Children from Source Point Press, and my partner in crime in the words is Josh Stafford.
This is Josh, the other writer on Damn Cursed Children.
Great. And then we also have, as usual, Mr. Clay Harrison.
Hey now.
Josh Rose.
Hello.
And Kyle Condes.
Nope.
So today we have, like I said, it's going to be a little bit different format because we really just want to talk about comics and then the book that Howard and Josh are writing that's coming out very soon. So we'll just spend most of the time talking about that as opposed to our normal format. So let's just jump. I want to jump right into your book, and then we'll just expand from there into like other comic book things.
Sounds good to me.
Because we did get to read it. I read the book this week, and I was like, "Damn, okay." This book is not like from the first page. You just get like a real quick 0 to 100.
Yep, off and running.
Yeah. So I guess my first question is, how did this book kind of come about? How did the idea for this book come about?
I was sick in bed and dying.
Oh no!
Somewhat. My kids were in daycare that time during this time, and I got sick like every month for a couple of weeks consistently. And Josh, being the good friend he was, gave me a ring, and he called me up to ask me if I was going to be going to Fan Expo, which is the big convention in Toronto, if I could get him in. You know, he didn't ask if I was well or not yet, though, at this point. So I'm
I had my priorities.
So I was coughing, blowing my nose out, and I was like, yeah, I think so. If I'm alive then, sure, you can come. And then he's like, wait, are you sick? I'm like, yeah. Are you just a new sick, or are you still sick? I'm like, I'm still sick from last week, I think, or the week before. It's like, what happened? I'm like, it's my kids, blah, blah, blah. He's like, damn cursed children. And my brain was like, ooh, that's a good title. Because I was, sick in bed. I couldn't even get out of bed at any time. I was like, that's a great title. That'd be a great horror title. He's like, you should write it. I'm like, I should, but I can't get out of bed, so that's not a good idea either. And I joked with him, like, why don't you start writing it, and then we can write it together. And then, he did. He said, I think the same week you sent me the plot, and I was like, I can't read this right now, but I'm going to read this and try. And I think I started sending him notes. I'm like delirious at this point. You have to remember, I'm really delirious, sleep deprived. I'm coughing and things coming out of every orifice here and there. And I'm like sending him notes that may or may not be, proper for the story. But when I got better, we had a serious talk about it, and then it became a thing. I mean, first it was a joke, obviously. Then it became a real thing because when I was well, I was realizing how good of a title it was and where it could be, and looking at Josh's plot and the notes that actually did make sense from mine, it actually could be something really cool. So we worked on it from that point. That's where the genesis from. So that was like more than 10 years ago, right, Josh? Yeah, it was definitely more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, and there was like giant gaps in between of not working on it, but it's just really one of those things of what started is just, if I get credit for coming up with the title, Howard gets credit for saying do it. I get credit for forming it together. Howard gets credit for really putting some professional twists and turns on it. And it's just a real, that's what I love about comic books is just collaboration. Like well, with rare exception, you can't do it by yourself. And so this is just something, and now that it took us so long to get this done, it's really a geek dream come true that within a couple of weeks, it's going to be on paper and available for everybody to read. And as a lifelong comic reader, every time it happens, it never gets old. It's always pretty awesome.
That's amazing. So as this has been kind of in the works for about 10 years now, was it spurred on by our current, global pandemic at all, or did those things just happen to coincide?
Crazy coincidence.
Gotcha. All right.
I've said that if in 50 years, if somebody just randomly picks up Damn Cursed Children out of a whatever a 50-cent book bin is in 50 years, a $10 bin, they're going to assume that it was written now, but it's just a wild, funny, not so funny coincidence that we did everything goes terribly wrong pandemic kind of story, and then it happened. So it's very strange.
Yeah, I mean, when we were working on it for on and off, including the artist, I should mention his artist name, Robin Simon Ng. He's Singaporean from Singapore, so shout out to him. Unfortunately, couldn't join us today for obvious reasons for the time zone difference. We were working on and off, having children. He was having kids in the middle of all this, so there's a lot of big lulls for good reasons. It wasn't like he just took off and didn't bugger it up and did nothing. He was being a dad and all, so it was really cool. And in between all this, I was trying to pitch it to publishers, and I know this book wasn't for everybody, but because when you work with certain publishers, they always ask, what you're working on. So I'm like, well, I'm working on something that you may or may not want to publish. Here you go. Here's some pages that we got done. Here's the pitch. And you're like, this is really cool. I love the idea. I see where you're going with it. We can't publish this. And it's sort of like, I kind of knew that, but tell me why again. It's like, well, it's sort of out of our wheelhouse. It goes beyond, the parameters that we want to do. So, if most people know, every publisher has a certain set of things they want to do. We want to call it a checklist of things that they would like to have underneath their umbrella. And there's some things that may or may not fall into that they don't want to do, not because they don't like it. We had more positive reactions from this pitch than some of my other pitches, and I was sort of like, this is good and bad. And every time I come back to the teams, like, so I pitched to X. It's like, how did they decide? They said it was great. They're not doing it. so I was like the barrier of good and bad news at the same time. So it took a long time before we found Source Point Press, and I didn't even pitch it to them, really. Sounds so bad. I was at a party after one of the convention nights. I think it was the first night. I think it was the first night of Fan Expo, like the last Fan Expo before all this happened. Yeah, it was like, Fan Expo before all this happened. And I remember I was going to bite into my burger finally, and then a friend tapping my shoulders. You got to meet Travis. I'm like, sure. I won't eat. Who's Travis? So he drags me across the bar and to the other side. He's like, this is Travis. He's from Source Point Press. I'm like, hi, Travis from Source Point Press. I'm Howard, who he hasn't eaten yet, but how's it going? And then Travis and I had honestly, a nice conversation, and it lasted for quite a while about the business and where he sees his company going and what the stuff that they do. And then, normal world, he's asked, so you have what you're working on? You have anything to pitch? I'm like, nothing much, not really. I have things that people don't want. You want to hear those? Because I wasn't planning to pitch. I literally was there to hang out with friends. I was not dressed for it. I mean, I was literally in sandals and shorts and a t-shirt. I mean, I was there to chill out and hang out, right? So,
con gear.
Totally. It was like, I'm on the floor. I'm just gonna, let my feet breathe and expand and all that. So I pitched him Damn Cursed Children and some other things. And I told him, I didn't pitch it like I pitch. I said, this is the reasons why publishers don't want to publish this, because it involves children who become feral, and they might, and they get sort of murdered a lot in the book, and people may not want to see that because they might be from certain groups that frown upon that. And then I see his face changing, and I'm like, oh, here it comes. He's going to say he's going to like it. He's seeing the art. He likes the art. He's going to tell me no. I'm prepared for that, so I can go eat my burger. And he looked at me. He looked at me dead in the eye. He's like, fuck it, we'll do it.
Nice. That's awesome. Nice.
So, me being Canadian, I was like, yes, wait, is this like drunk con or is this like real? Like this is happening. So I managed to see him the next day at his booth on the con floor, and I did. And everything went from there. Everything was cool, and he asked for more stuff. We sent more stuff. We talked, and they've been very good to us because every time I show them my page, like this is like one of the pages and scenes that I'm not sure you guys would be cool with. We can change it if you want, and it's like we see, since you guys read issue 1, you can see where it would go by issue 2, 3, and 4, and 5. He's like, oh, these are fine. Oh, that's brutal. Absolutely fine. I'm like, you guys, yes. You guys get it. That's great. Thank you very much. So we don't have to change anything. It's like, yeah, absolutely not. This is absolutely awesome, So it's been, awesome to work with, and they get it, and thank God they get it because every time you get a lot of positive responses, and then the no's and the good reasons why no. You ask yourself, is this a property that's meant for comic books or not? Because maybe it's so indie, we have to do it ourselves, go through Kickstarter and have big disclaimers all over the freaking place so that people don't pick it up and go, what the hell did I just back? This is crazy. So, it was sort of that in the back of my mind, like, if this all goes to hell, I'll risk my career, put it in Kickstarter, and disclaimer the hell out of it. So that's why it took so long. And the funny thing was when our solicitation dates were set way before the pandemic happened. So when the pandemic occurred, I actually had a phone call with Travis. Well, a Facebook phone call with Travis. I'm like, so are we still going forward or not? Because I totally understand if he said no, because shit has totally hit the fan at that point, right? He's like, yeah, it should be fine. I'm like, okay, because if you say pause, do it later, I totally get it. I don't want to put anyone in that company, in the red because of putting a book that may not sell because of where we're in. But they're all totally like, do it. It's gonna be fine. Don't worry about it. We got you. So it's like, okay, because we're gonna launch a book literally in the heart of the pandemic. Yay! So
was there a point where you were looking at maybe just digital? Is that what they were going to pivot to?
No. The thing with Source Point Press is that they're very great and brilliant in how they get their books out there. So besides going to your comic book shop and ordering from previews like any other book, you can order directly from them, the digital version as well as a hard copy. But the reason why they do that, a lot of people, a lot of comic shops that don't have not worked with them before, sort of get that. Why would you do that? It's still in their business. It's not for that. It's because there's a lot of places out, areas and cities and towns and whatnot that don't have a comic book shop that's close by. And especially now when you can't technically, if you're in a lockdown, like we're in a lockdown right now, or the province that we're in, you can't go out to go grab a comic book because the comic book shops only do curbside pickup, or if not, you can't go browse the shelves and stuff. So it allows people who can't get access or not available to leave their home to get the comic book, to get it via digital, or if they want a physical copy, get mailed directly from the publisher. So it's not, but we all encourage, including them, to go to, order from the shops if there's a shop nearby you first. So when you have no other options, then that's what there is availability for. So that's what I love about them, because when I ask them, like, are you trying to like do like double dip kind of thing? Because I'm not too cool with that. I get what you want to do that, but I'm not really cool. And then they explain their how they work with the comic book shops, and that's why they do exclusives and stuff like that with different shops, with covers and stuff like that, to encourage people to go to the shops or order from the shops. So that's why they're a really cool company. I mean, they call themselves a small outfit, but they have so much heart in that company. It's pretty cool to work with them.
Yeah, I'm on their site now, and so is this sounds like the first project and book you've done with Source Point Press. Are there others, or
no? For both Josh and myself, this is the first one.
Okay,
and hopefully not the last one.
Right. Well, because I was, like you said, they seem like a small outfit, but they've got licensed properties on here. I see like the Gloomhaven book. There was something else I saw too. I mean, that's when I think licensed stuff, I think, oh, that's big, that's mainstream. So
yeah. Well, they've been working hard because, I mean, these guys are like I guess this is my version of how they market themselves and how they, do the con sales and convention sales and stuff like that. These guys like literally don't mind if you see like an uphill battle, covered in ice with giant ogres coming down. they'll just lace their boots. I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
They'll do it. So during during the pandemic, I get an email from them. It's sort of like, oh, Source Point Press is going to be merging with these other companies. I'm like, say what? Like, this is not a good time for that, is it? Because people are trying to not tank right now. So what they did was they're under, like, actually, Source Point Press is the comic book publishing element of this media company called Oxide Media, which also owns the tabletop company,
Okay.
Darkwater Games. Oh my God, I thought I
Yep.
remember that. And then N3, which does the board what do they call them? The tabletop display, like the tabletop pads and stuff like that you play on. So they
Oh, yeah.
combine these three companies under one, so they can share IP and then help each other out and stuff like that. So, which you mentioned, Gloomhaven. They also have, I think, the Claim is just coming out. I think it's coming out this month as well. Claim is actually one of the other licensed properties that they're doing as well. So they're I mean, they're working hard. I mean, these guys, when I saw them a couple years ago, before I introduced myself, to Travis the second time. I was watching them, like anybody else. He's like, I don't know these guys, and some friends, vouched for them. They didn't work with them yet, so I'm gonna watch them, see how they do on the con. And they're like working hard, like behind the table. They're the guys in front of the table. They're not selling their own books, though. Their creators are selling other the other creators' books. So I was like, okay, that is a good sign, because a lot of times creators only sell technically their own book, which totally it's understandable. But when you're selling your book and then you pull them person to buy other books from other creators, that is
Right.
so that it tells you the kind of camaraderie they have at the publishing house. So that's
Yeah.
what's made me that's why I'm like, okay, I like this. So wasn't just like last night, the infatuation of, ooh, you're answering all the good, I answered all the questions greatly, and then now it's sort of like, oh, I see you guys really work in it. That's good. So yeah, I mean, they call themselves a small outfit, but I mean, it says that they have a lot of heart with what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad we're getting background on Source Point Press, because we were talking before you guys joined the call. Like, I don't think I may have read something from Source Point in the past. I just can't come up with what it might be. Like, if I go back through the catalog, I'm sure I'll find something. But we're at a point like where we are trying to expand into more indie companies outside of the big two, and even just like outside of like Image and Dark Horse. Like, there's so much stuff out there. There's so many creators that are working on putting out books, and they just find ways like this, like other companies that will take that. I guess they'll take that chance, or they'll try to do something different, and they won't put all those like barricades up. Like, no, this isn't our kind of book and stuff like that, which kind of sounds like what SourcePoint is doing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you ask Josh, when Josh asked me, did he have any comments or changes, I was like, no. It's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I know. Because I'm used to, because I mean, when I first started out, my first published comic was through Image, and we went through so many changes before we got to the point where we were scripting it. So when you do that and you work for other publishers, and then I've done stuff for, like, I did it's so weird. I did story development for a Bandai toy, but then they also gave me to do a comic, and the changes were immense. Like, it's intense, like the amount of changes that you do with those things before it gets to the fun part where it's printed, so they can't change it now. Even when it's going even though it's sent to the the printing, in your heart, yeah, they might ask me to change something. I know they can.
Yeah,
And
Can you say what property it was?
for which one? For
Bandai?
the Bandai one? For
Bandai.
Bandai? Yeah, I have it here because I get used to publishing houses. So this is called Full Metal Ghost. You can see here.
Cool.
that's a cool
And
title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so this property is actually a toy property from actually, I'm going to show you the name. I can't see my own camera, so you
Yeah, we see
see.
it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Uno-san here is a guy who actually designed Mobile Suit Gundam and all the
Oh,
Gundams
nice.
since. All the enemy vehicles from Gatchaman / Battle of the Planets for here, or G-Force if you're
Mm-hmm.
you're younger or older, I guess. And other things. His laundry list of creds is just, if you go to Wikipedia, you're scrolling. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
so he designed this giant robot toy, which is basically giant samurai robots and giant shinobi robots that are piloted by, well, because I read the story I wrote, are piloted by samurai and shinobi in the past. Um, so when I got hired for this, I'll show you some pages here. This was actually exclusive during the launch of the toy. So if you
That's
look,
rad. Yeah.
yeah. So it's crazy because he basically gave me free reign of what to do. At the meeting and all that, it's like, you're the only writer we want to work with because you worked with 3.0 before and you've done some cool stuff. And I was like, yeah, a lot of that stuff cannot see the day of light because of red tape from other things. It was I won't go into details, but they saw it. I'm like, you shouldn't have seen that. By obviously somebody like the owner showed you some stuff, which is cool, which is fine. And he basically let me do the story development for his entire toy line. So I was getting sketches from him before it was done. Uh, and then when we were scripting, that's when the changes happening. But mainly it wasn't from him. He only had a few things he wanted in because he was like, I want the sword in because I just designed it. I'm like, fine, that's not a problem, whatever. But it was like the marketing side of things and some of the sales things from Bandai and 3.0 that they wanted certain things so they can use it to venture off into the marketing branding part of it. So those changes happen almost all the way to production. Ooh, yeah, I know, exciting. So you got to a point where once upon a time there was an accountant that sat through all the meetings, and then one day I found out why she was, because we were supposed to do a 5-issue miniseries based on this story development to do a first arc I was doing. Then we got down to 10 pages because according to accounting, we can do more giveaways during the launch if we shorten the amount of pages and print it as a short
Jeez.
story.
You can print twice as many books of the one
Yeah,
issue.
Right.
Yeah, but that's math. I'm like, yeah. Do you understand? You have to like draw and write it. That doesn't really work story wise. But let me talk to the artist and see what we can do. Give me 24 hours to see if it's doable. If not, then I'll make a trailer kind of thing. I don't know. So that's what happened. That happened like on the 11th hour. Like literally, issue 1 was practically in the can. So I had to redo it. But it's totally fine. I mean, these things happen all the time, though, but for good reason. And because they did that, to be honest, they gave out more marketing material to more people. That's the reality, right? Because the comic wasn't the main focus. The focus was the toy. I was there for story development for multimedia stuff, which I can't get into because of NDAs and stuff. So my job was technically done. The comic was just because, oh, you write comic books, you should do one for us. So that's what happened.
Have you done any horror properties?
Sorry?
Have you done any horror IP?
Yes, I have. I don't. I did one with actually. I'll talk about 2. One I did for an anthology called Monstrosity. This is volume 2, I think. Actually, my brain is really shotty today. Should be volume 2, and let's see if I can find my story. The other one I did was for another anthology called Hogtown Horrors, which I did with Josh and Robin. Basically, we, with our wisdom, decided to see if we can use that as I guess, a jumping pad for Damn Cursed Children. So we stuck some pages from the first issue into an anthology story. And lo and behold, it worked. So Josh can talk about that as I look for my story in this because I can't find it yet.
Yeah, they were looking for short stories, and because Damn Cursed Children was kind of sitting on a shelf, we had the idea that we could take 5 or 6 pages, and it was a little bit of work. We had to change around some word balloons and stuff like that, but pretty much, without spoiling it for anyone who hasn't read it yet, it's the introductory scene of our first character, and instead of it just being her introductory scene, it kind of feels like her being killed by the monster. Like it's just a normal day. Something crazy happens. She goes on the run. She gets cornered, and that's the end of our story. So it's like a nice little short, creepy Twilight Zone kind of thing. But it worked, and that was Damn Cursed Children in print for the first time, and it just kind of was this 11th hour thing that we submitted, and so we got it in a book, and then that got nominated for the Joe Shuster Awards here in Canada as best anthology. So with this crazy asterisk, Howard and Robin and I, our story is nominated amongst others for the best anthology of the year a couple of years ago. And I was like, wow, that gets to be on my resume forever now. And that was just, and now that is in the pages that you guys looked at in the first 5 or 10 pages of Damn Cursed Children. And, but yeah, so another, you never know when it's, it's a lot of work, but it's also luck and right time at the right place. And Hogtown Horror dominoing into Source Point Press is definitely one of those things.
Yeah. So the thing I did for Monstrosity Volume 2 was a thing called In the Machine's Mind. I don't know if you can see the art here. I know we're doing a podcast, but you guys can look at that. So it's a space horror. So I was doing a story about AI and stuff like that, and how if you're plugged in, basically the idea was if you're plugged into an AI that's scanning your brain and using it to control stuff. So what happens if you fall asleep and it reads your subconscious thoughts, your dreams, and it believes those are actual commands? Where would it go? So obviously it goes horribly wrong in my story, and people die. And I think the funny thing is people always are surprised, like, you write horror? I'm like, I write a lot. I can write a lot of things. I've written stuff for like things I don't like to talking about too much. I mean, I've written stuff for like Tony and Guy Hong Kong for marketing. So I wrote about shampoo and hair products. I mean, I probably use every, it's like when you go, let's go to the thesaurus and find a word for X. I'm like, I did that because you can only describe shampoo so many different ways before you're like, I've used them all, possibly. But I mean, I have a fun story of that one where I joked with myself, like, I'm going to try to sneak a word that you would never ever use for hair product line to see if they'll be okay with it. So I used the word titillating in one of the things, just because I was just losing my mind with how many words I could combine to enhance the marketing of it. And they're like, "This is great." I'm like, "You serious?" Because if you're because you're taking the marketing to expats, English expats. I'm like, expats, if I was there as an expat, I would laugh my ass off at this. I totally get it. And you would have hooked me because I would be laughing at it and remembering it and showing my friends that. So they did that, and the sales went up, and I did a long stint with them because of that. Because they before they weren't sure, because it's like, what do you know about the Hong Kong market? I'm like, you're selling to people like me and people in North America who live there. So maybe I do. So we did a lot of stuff together. I read down to the newsletters and stuff so I wrote like newsletters, copy ad, Facebook ads, what have you, anything to pay the bill, and I still do, to be honest. So comic books is my my love, my passion for sure. But I read everything. So when people ask, "Do you write horror?" Yeah. You write sci-fi? I did. I wrote giant robots with the guy who basically started the giant robot trend in the world. Wow, what a thought that was, right? But most people you just think of me as a person who writes superhero comics because I started with After the Cape and Image, and for some reason that stuck with me. But every story I wrote since then would have been like, I did a fictional World War II story for Grunts. I forgot the publisher's name. That's awful. Yeah, that's awful. That's not a good thing. And a bunch of other things, but totally not super. I have not done a superhero story since. Whoa, no, wait. After the Cape, my next superhero story was Iron Man, I think. Yeah, that was it. So everything since between those things, not because I don't want to be honest. It's just that I like writing different things. So yeah.
So
Well, are y'all both horror fans? I mean, like, how deep do you read some of the horror comics out there?
You answer that first, Josh. I'm gonna grab something.
Yeah, I am a lifelong horror fan. Been watching horror movies since I was way too young and should not have been watching those horror movies. But growing up in that VHS era of corner stores with teenagers who didn't care that they were renting to the 11-year-old. So I definitely grew up in that era. I love the old 70s Marvel black and white horror comics that kind of came out during that satanic panic in the 70s.
Yes.
I think Robin's artwork, unintentionally, because Robin is the most non-nerd comic artist you will ever meet in your life. I'm pretty sure he's never seen a movie or read a comic book. I don't know how he stumbled into doing it, because every reference that we sent him, every Easter egg was like nothing. So there's no chance that Robin's ripping off anybody. So
I saw this Easter egg on page 14. So whose reference was
you did,
this?
yes.
He's not a nerd.
That was me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and
I can't reach it, but I have the same toy up on my shelf above my head here.
Clay, for the audio
listeners.
listeners, what was that, Clay? What did you hold up?
It is from Scott Kurt's PvP
Oh,
strip.
That's what it is. I was trying to place it.
Okay, good. Yeah, because everybody's gonna be
Yeah.
listening to this. Like, I guess they're holding up their hands and looking at something. Like,
He put
you know,
out a troll plush for like a limited time, and I think I got it at one of the cons back when he used to live in Dallas.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and speaking of Easter eggs, I guess I was immediately smitten with the cover and all of the classic EC, both just like the composition of it, but even like how you tweak the logo for Source Point to look like the EC logo. So, is that a point of inspiration for you both when you work on either this book or any horror comics?
For me, I didn't intentionally start out with doing homages in my brain for the story. Like I honestly didn't. I did it sort of the same way I did a bunch like a lot. If anytime I do a creator own story, I always take it down to if these are real people in a real situation, how would they really react, and how far can I go with that to make it fantastical. So for like in this case, I looked at I watched a bunch of old movies, and some of you guys already referenced. And also because my horror background is also from Asia, so I watched a lot of the Thailand stuff and the Hong Kong stuff, which is mind blowing. I don't think you can ever show it here. Honestly, come to think of it, really effed up stuff. But one of my favorite Hong Kong ones that you can, I think they did show it here. I think it's called Rigor Mortis, which is a low budget Hong Kong horror film that basically modernizes the Chinese, we call the Chinese vampire, which is just sort of like a zombie vampire mix.
The
Yeah,
jumping one, yeah.
Yeah. So the way he did that was like, wow. I was so thought like they modernized it and still made it scary, and oh crap, it worked. Versus because this deviate really quickly. Besides the scary horror stuff in Asia, they did the humor horror stuff, which is so weird because it's supposed to be scary as shit stuff, but they make it funny. So it's like this weird like combination of two genres that shouldn't really mix well, but it mixes very well.
Oh, Shaun of the
Um,
Dead.
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But how many horror comedies work though?
yeah,
Right.
That's a good question, right? So, so I grew up watching that stuff because my parents, like any Asian parents, have no idea what ratings are, so they just show everything. And like Josh, I mean, every summer, me and my friends would just rent from the teenager who's working at the video store. Is like, yeah, here, just give me the money. I don't know what you rented, but you rented something, and I have the money. It's in the till. Who cares? So, um, and oh man, the Blockbuster days were so good because this is so bad. You can return stuff within a certain amount of time. So if you have enough friends, you can technically rent a movie for free. I'm not going to say how back then, but we might have done that. Might have. So yeah, but
What were your favorite killer kid films? I mean, we're going to be reading your book, and you've got like an army of killer kids. Did you guys reference anything before this?
Well, that's the thing. It's like horror. You don't have to be original. There's not a lot of original anymore in anything. But the key is you got to put your own thumbprints on it and put really good characters. So I fell in love with these characters right away. And there was times where we had to kill a couple of them. And just the cliche of a writer sitting at your keyboard and just being like, oh, I don't want to kill them, but you do. So nowhere in the book, I don't think, never along a very long road were we ever saying, oh, we're referencing this. Oh, this is an Easter egg here. But it's just there. So it's like, I've seen Village of the Damned, and, so this is definitely a brand new monster. And even I've been joking a few times on these interviews that to sound like a horror snob talking about like Frankenstein's monster versus Frankenstein, these aren't zombies. Like they're
Right.
they're not undead. They're not crawling out of graves. These are just, it is very influenced by, for me, George Romero, because my favorite thing about George Romero's original trilogy and other things that he's done is it's never explained. There's no time in Night of the Living Dead do they say, this is a magic thing, this is a rabies thing, this is a comet that flew over. And so I like that. I like just jumping in. And so for us, when we jumped into it, they are scary kids, but there was nothing really like that Hollywood pitch where it's this meets that. Like, this is just a
yeah,
scare kid story, but not specifically referenced to anything.
Yeah.
I mean, from what we can tell in the preview, the kids are under 10 that are possessed and violent. So that's all we know at this point.
Yes, you're the first person who ever
The
mentioned
characters do learn a bit
awesome.
about that. Yeah, that comes in the next couple issues, maybe the next issue.
So what would happen to a woman who's pregnant?
Oh,
This is why we keep Clay around, because he finds those details.
We asked the first a question where no one's. You know what? Funny, and actually, this is going to sound bad for them. No one has asked us that question. Not even Source Point Press has asked us that question, as why are the kids are at a certain age that has this happened to them. We know why. Josh and I obviously know why, because I made a big giant note. These are the the bracket that's going to happen. And as to why, whatever, we'll figure it out later. And partially they're referencing
there's a mathematical equation to our monsters.
Interesting.
Cool.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, now you're sharing too much. But
I was thinking biological, so it's
well, we could be like Robert Kirkman and go aliens, but no. But the reality is, we didn't have a preconceived direction for where and why and all that. Our focus was actually on the characters. We don't have like the typical is a scientist or a doctor who can heal and help people and figure this shit out. We don't have an ex Navy SEAL who's going to just basically train everybody to kill shit immediately. We don't have people going, okay, this shit hit the fan. Grab a cleaver. We're going to like get in the car, suit up and get out of here. No one does that. No one. When things hit the fan, people freak the hell out. That's the reality. People scream, shout, hide. Maybe they freeze up.
Toilet paper.
Well, yeah, exactly. With the world today, we saw like all that pitch I wrote was explaining all that, but now that we have real concrete evidence of what I said, so I was like, "Hey, Travis, see, people go nuts. They bought toilet paper instead of food. I don't get why, but I'm in Costco buying food right now. So, it was a joke. Like he already approved the book. I was just doing that as a joke, but I was like, in my mind, I was like, I remember being Costco. People were like going for toilet paper. I'm like, I'm going for canned goods because I like to eat. Call me crazy. Because I mean, I guess it's like your experience too. I think people in North America in general who don't experience these kind of things where things shut down for a bit don't know what to do. Like I visit family in Hong Kong every so often, and I've been caught in typhoons. And my first time I was in a typhoon, before it happened, like you have the warnings. People say it's going to hit, land. It's going to hit land at a certain time. My mother was like, "We got to go buy food now."
Oh wow!
Go buy food. This is a list for you. You're gonna go to the supermarket because you can read English, so you're gonna do that because you're gonna be shit all in the wet markets. so I'm like buying stuff, going, why are we buying like 10 cans of this? And like your apartment is only so big. I mean, we're gonna be like, sleeping standing up at this point, right? She was right though. Boom, everything shut down. The windows were taped up, and we just hunkered down. And because they use for their kitchen, everything's gassed for the stove, so you can cook, right? You need lights, you have candles, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
So we had food enough for a week in case things got really bad, but it never did. After like the second day, 2 days, whatever, you're fine, right? But like they automatically get in this mindset, okay, this is what we do, bang, 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 because they've been through that.
Yeah.
So we took the approach of what happens. No one's going to be in a situation where all the children want to eat you. So no one's going to be ready. So no one's going to be prepared. But we didn't want those characters to be, have skill sets that could survive this and then come together and become the super team. Because that you've seen that in movies, you've seen that in stories over and over again. It drives me up the wall because like it so happened to be a doctor here who can save you and fix your chopped off leg here. Done. Come on, really? I mean, reality is the first people around you when it's a fan's your family. Unless you are so happen to be one's a doctor, one's a military person, one's a so and so, you're in good hands right there.
Unless you're The Rock, you're not prepared for this, right?
Well, if you're The Rock, you're pretty much you just all climb behind on his shoulders like, let's go. So, but that's actually no. So no, that's how we approached the story writing. Was from there we echoed out that direction in our story. So there was never we're gonna follow this movie, this story, this comic, da 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 da. None of that. We're just like, how would you survive if you were this character? How would you survive if you were the X character? And, when Josh mentioned choosing who's going to die, who's going to live. If you look at some of our covers, we actually wrote down who will die, because that's literally what we did. Who should die? The conversation for that was the longest, I think, if everything is like who should die. It wasn't who deserved to die. So that's a big difference. In stories we always have who deserves to die. We don't have that. We just who should die,
Right.
in the situation they're in, which is much harder to write than this person deserves to die. So you're all rooting for this person to die. So he or she is going to bite it somewhere along the road. Which
Now,
makes
did
it
you
The choice words.
were you fans of The Walking Dead? Did y'all read or watch the show?
This is hilarious because we've got this question a few times, and we mean no disrespect because I've read other Robert Kirkman stuff and liked it a lot and listened to him on podcasts, and he seems like a lovely guy. I know nothing about The Walking Dead. It's the big hole in my horror nerd thing of the past few years. And I think the reason is because Damn Cursed Children, there's a lot of heavy, dark, scary moments, but there's also a lot of kind of the monsters act like gremlins. There's big Hollywood action scenes. There's a lot of fun in there too. And I think with Walking Dead, for me anyhow, and it's the same with a few other movies kind of that ilk, it was just too much for me. Like I read some of the comics and I was like, oh, this is just, I know this is going to get darker and grimmer and more depressing. And there's not going to be that kind of pseudo happy ending like in Shaun of the Dead, like, so never say never, but I don't really, it's not an influence on me, except for the part that I know Kirkman was greatly influenced by George Romero, who I am as well. But I don't know the characters' names. I don't know where they're at the TV show right now. So
Well, it just seemed like a long form horror story that was out there that might have been an inspiration if you guys are looking to take a comic that long.
Wow, that's a good question. Let me first answer that. I'm like Josh. I don't know nothing about The Walking Dead. Except I did meet Robert at San Diego when I was there back in. Holy shit! I think it's the same time I met you, actually, Josh, back in 06, 07. And nicest guy. I went up to talk to him, and then we were talking about our kids, and then some people came and asked him about The Walking Dead, and that was the end of our conversation. It was like, I know nothing. I'm just going to fade in like,
Into the
so yeah, it's
I mean, what's
weird.
the long game here? Are you guys
So,
looking at
Josh,
short story or going over 100 issues?
Not over 100 issues, but we do have we have more stories in mind, roughed out, and hopefully we'll get to tell them with Source Point Press. And it's kind of hard. It's like step one is just getting this first one out, and so trying to think about the other one, but also kind of concentrating on publicity and getting this one out. But we have definitely, Howard and I have discussed the next step for this world for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's always like, do you have more? Yes, you always when you write a story, or it doesn't matter what media or medium actually, so that you're doing a story about, you always have a little bit more than you need in case what you have. Because it's the saying, you kill your babies in your story. But when you do that, you sort of have, okay, now I have less than I had before. So you always write more than you need a bit, so that in case you have that, you can sort of push, you can sort of add, filter it back in. But it also allows you to extend the world that you're building, if you already created. As for going like a Walking Dead to 100 issues, in the back of my mind, I'm not sure if it would be conducive to the world that we have built so far, if with what we've designed and developed for the world so far. But if you ask me if we can do maybe 1 to 2 more limited series of stuff, I think absolutely, because we already have that much material because of us talking, and it said it's been over a decade, so we've been like going beyond this story a long time ago. But I don't think we're gonna go. I don't know. We're gonna go like super hardcore long for it, because there's only so many things you can do with children being Pharaoh and
Yeah.
Well,
and,
you've created a lot of questions. I mean,
right?
just this preview, like, I'm very
Yeah.
curious. Are all the kids like this? I'm starting to theorize what happens if this is just a toddler thing. So, like, from 2 to 6, they want to kill everyone, but after that, they can actually grow out of this.
That's interesting. This guy, he is the first
Confirm
one.
or deny that we are working on further stories. It may or may not go along.
Let me just tell you,
Like that.
Clay is very thorough. So like,
No, I'm enjoying this. I like Clay's theories, and they're nice theories.
I mean, a world that has to adapt without kids becomes a new place, and it can have that happy ending, but everyone has to accept some things.
Coming
And
soon
so
from Clay Harrison, cursed damn children.
I have questions.
Well, you know what? Those are great
Got 4 more
questions.
issues to read.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yep, exactly. You have definitely 4 more issues to read. You have great questions. I love that fact you're asking them. You're actually you are the first interviewer who's ever asked these questions, which we can answer. So that's kudos to you. I'm just smiling away because I'm not going to answer those. But you're definitely on the right train, my friend. I love that. I'm glad. Thank you very much for asking those questions.
Oh, you
But
bet,
yes,
man.
as Josh mentioned, there are 5 issues in total. So issue 1, people have always told us that we get to gear 1,000 on page 3. It's true, and then
Absolutely.
we don't let up. we don't. We kind of egged each other on that with them. So be prepared, as I could say. And then by the end of issue 5, we'll see where we go. I know. I've spoken to SourcePoint Press slightly about it because, like anybody else, I'm making sure that things are cool with how we can do production wise and stuff with how the world is today. But story wise, we're in for the creators, both Josh, myself, and Robin. We are totally in. We've committed between ourselves that we want to do this. If the fans want it, definitely pre-order, back order the book. Tell SourcePoint Press you want Damn Chris Children everywhere, and then we have every right to go. Okay, we want to do more, or we want to do do something even bigger than we planned before. It allows us to do more, to be honest, because without the fans, it's just me and Josh, reading their comic books to each other, which is great. But I would love to hear people's opinions and theories. Seriously, I mean, this is the whole reason why we write stories, is to have talking points. What Clay's brought up is exactly why I like to write and share my writing. There's no right or wrong answers. But you might nail stuff that we've thought about, yes. But there is no right or wrong answers to how you interpret our story, for sure.
Well, and especially nowadays, tweets and blogs and Facebook reviews, it really does matter. The powers that be take notice. Whether you're a big media magazine, like we're going to have a couple reviews in like here in Canada. I think you guys get it on there, but a magazine called Rue Morgue is going to be nice enough to do a piece on us. And so that's great. But even just like when someone tweets and that gets retweeted, or even when someone orders one copy through their comic store and the comic store might not have taken notice of it because Previews is this intimidating tome of a catalog that comes out every month that's like twice the size of a old school phone book.
Yeah.
They'll go, oh, that looks neat. Maybe I'll order 2 or 3 more for the store now. And like, so it really is. And like this battle that Howard and I are in the trenches right now of just, and it's fun. It's super fun of just doing lots of interviews and lots of text interviews and online interviews. But it's just, work. And so you just hope that every time 1 or 2 people hear and order a book. And I just got a response from another nerd podcast group the other day. And the guy said, oh, I already had pre-ordered your book before you emailed me. And it's the most flattering, amazing thing in the world, because you're just like, oh, you're not my mom. Like, you didn't have to order this. So that dude ordered before we even bothered him. So yeah, every little bit helps. It really does nowadays.
Well, especially in the nowadays where we can't go to conventions, you guys can't be going to like your local comic shops and stuff, and like plan a tour to like talk about the book and just visit people that you gotta pivot to a different type of marketing, and like you mentioned, just being in the trenches a little bit differently. um I gotta ask, because I think I really like this part about the book. And is the book black and white, or is it just the preview that is black and white?
Nope.
All
The
black
book
and white.
Okay.
all black and white. Yeah.
Good.
Love
Very
it.
good
Oh
choice.
yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. The art really complements the storytelling
Mm-hmm.
in black and white. So
Yeah, we haven't talked much about the art, but I think Robin did. Like it from the first page, from that first panel, you just kind of get sucked in, and you're like, what's going on here with all the the children taking a nap.
I
And then,
love creepy kids, and those look creepy.
yeah.
they go from adorable to creepy in like one panel, which is really impressive. So
It's so good. When I first saw that art, I went to film school, and a screenwriting class I really loved really drilled into my head that you got to grab them by page 3. And so it was a slightly different medium, but they said, because if you're sending out to people, whether it be film festivals or to get printed in an anthology or whatever, a lot of times people have a lot to read. So if you don't get them right away, they might read 3 or 4 pages and then drop it. And I was already very proud of our script, but when Howard sent in the rough art, oh my God, it was so great. And I've had big shot professional nerd comic artists talk to me about how much they like the art, just friends of mine who I sent preview pages to. So yeah, it's very awesome. And and it's just a happy accident, because the publisher could have said, no, we need it in color because kids only like color nowadays. But the fact that they were okay with it as is, it's great. It looks, like I said, it looks like a 1970s, to me, looks like a 1970s Marvel horror comic.
Yeah, and if somebody tells you that comics need to be in color, you tell them, "Have you read The Walking Dead?" And they're like, "Oh,
yeah.
Well, yeah.
I'm just big on horror books. Typically, black and white
Yeah.
is great. If they're doing color, I'm probably thinking back to the old Chaos books. You're expecting just a lot of blood and stuff, but like a good creepy story is black and white for me.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to see color, the colored version. I mean, Robin colored all the covers, so that's how you would color. So if you want to have an inkling of how it would look like, if you look at the covers, they're insane. By the way, I mean, and oh my God, when Josh mentioned the references that we sent him that he didn't know any clue about, we sent him horror movie posters down to EC covers, and there's only a few EC, horror covers. So that was a long, very long email we sent them. But his coloring, and because we were so used to seeing his stuff in black and white, when he first did the first cover, I asked him, like, do you want to color it yourself? Because I've never seen you color before. It's like, let me give it a shot. So his shot was what you see. I'm like, yeah, you can color. What the hell? What do you mean? I was like looking at him like, my God, look at that crazy detail for this cover. Are you sure? That's like one of the, like, we didn't just do 5 covers. He did more than 5 covers when we submitted to Source Point. So I'm like, just do the rough version and send it in, get some rough colors on it, so they have an idea, and then so you don't waste your time doing every single one. He did. He just did them all. So I'm like, okay, this makes it much harder for me to figure out which 5 to pick. So we did a voting between us and Source Point Press's production crew to vote which 5 covers would make it to their first 5 issues. So we have actually extra covers that look phenomenally amazing, by the way, that are in the, basically in the in storage right now. So if anyone ever wants to go, how would this look like in color? You just imagine those colors on every single page. It'll look great, I think, but I personally like the way he did it in black and white, because he was questioning it. Be honest with you, Robin was questioning, should we color this? Should we do a test color page for Source Point Press to show them the difference? I'm like, let me show them, your inks first, and then take it from there. If they think it's now not strong enough to be on its own, talk about it, because it's not just us working on this way. That's why when you're working for a publisher, they're not just hitting print. They're there to give input and do other things, hopefully. And they were like, no, you're doing black and white. Don't do this in color. Don't be stupid. I'm like, okay, sure. And I told Robin, Robin's like, great. Then I just ink everything and I'm done. I'm like, yeah. pretty much. It's kind of a weird feeling to say that to an artist. Like, yeah, you're done after your inking, but you have 5 issues to ink. But okay.
Yeah.
Well, is that extra content you may add to like a hardback collection you put together at some point?
I was
Josh?
saying that if we ever get one of those amazing, absolute expensive hardcovers, the one funny thing is the scripts would be unreadable because Howard and I worked on it for so long that it'd be like, okay, now we're doing the blues, now we're doing the yellows, now we're doing orange text, and we have so many notes in there. Like it's just we can read it, but no one else can. But yeah, like Howard mentioned these extra covers that Robin did. One specifically that I just remembered right now is I just grabbed a photo of my favorite niece, and she's a little horror nerd as well. And I think it was just her like eating breakfast, but
It wasn't
Robin
breakfast,
turned
though.
it in. Yeah, Robin turned it into a kid eating breakfast, and then like right away turning into the monster. So that wasn't used, but I hope that we get that into the trade or something like that is just backup and he's got all these great character designs that he did. That was a real amazing thing too. When we sent him character designs, or just like ideas saying like maybe kind of like this actor or this age or this height, and he sent back these amazing designs that he just got him kind of like the coloring that Howard mentioned he did. He just got these character designs all done in one. I had no notes. I was like, yep, that's everybody. Looks good. Start drawing.
Yeah, I gotta say that I think my favorite sequence is at the school with the
Yes.
on the stage,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then everything just in an instant just switches. And I think I saw the other covers, and you guys have them labeled as the suit shows up, and there's a child that gets punted, and I was like, yeah, I don't think I've read anything like this in the past. So it's definitely very exciting to see something that like comics can still be different and surprise you like this, and help like it's stuff like this that makes you want to go out and expand it, like from just reading capes and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like as we mentioned before, we didn't go for one tone, so we have some serious scenes, some very traditional horror scenes, and some campy scenes because, we're fans of different levels of horrors. Like if you go, do you like Evil Dead 2? I'm like, you'd be stupid not to, because I
Yeah.
watched that. I watched that the first time I watched that. People were like, "This is a great horror film." So I watched it as I try to watch it as a horror film. Like this is really more campy than it should I be laughing? Because I'm actually laughing at this shit. I'm not gonna. I know I'm going to spoil it. Who hasn't seen it? But I might spoil it for somebody. But there's scenes where you sit there and like, I should be laughing my ass off, but everybody else is sort of like sitting here. Like my friends are like trying to figure out because we're like young. We're should we be laughing? And I started giggling, and then we were just done. We were all laughing our asses off. There was the wall scene where things kept on doing that, and I like literally blurted out, "They ran out of red." And then the tree scene, I was like, "Oh, that is so wow." Okay.
Yeah.
I know we're in now. We're in this. This is awesome. That was it. So we try to have, those kind of things where like sometimes you gotta take yourself very seriously in certain scenes. Sometimes you gotta have that little smidge of not because as a reader you can't like that's why like what Josh mentioned in Walking Dead is very like it pulls you down like you're in quicksand. And that's the whole point. I mean, that's what his whole story is about: is to pull you down and then keep you down. Though you think you have an inkling of hope to get out, you don't. That's the whole point of The Walking Dead. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to touch upon different things because we have different likes and desires for the for the genre that we wrote. So we try to add it in and balance it all. And we always talk to each other. It's like that scene from issue 1 in a daycare with the daycare worker with the mug scene,
Yep.
where she clocks the kid. I actually, when Robin sent that first page in with that, I was like, wait, have we gone too far? I think we've gone too far. Now, don't forget, my kids were in daycare at this time. I was like, I think we've gone too far, maybe. And then Josh and I had a discussion, and Josh was like, no, it's totally fine. It works. It's great. That's what we should do, right? But like, what would you do if a kid started coming at you? What's the first thing you do? I'm like, I'd probably throw the hot coffee in the face, and then I would bash him in the head. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay, we'll go for it. And then because basically all the stuff is scaled from there, and it was like after the cup thing discussion, nothing was wrong. I think it was just everything. And you see that too. And I was like, oh my God. Like we didn't, well, the funny thing is we never had a plan going, we have a checklist of how many items we're going to use in this story and how many kids are going to, whatever. never happened. Like if you ask us right now and gave us money for it to know what items we've used, how many have been, killed, no idea. We don't. We never did a count because we didn't. That wasn't the point of the story. We still at the point we don't like. I don't know if it was sort of a unspoken challenge. Like, did you know how many? Like people have asked us that. I'm like, no. Should we know? I mean, like, yeah, it's our story, but I don't think we ever did a count and went through every panel and go, okay, this is how many children got killed and not and so forth, and what items were there, like a bingo card. No, we never did that. So it's been a very interesting journey in that sense, because other stories.
Your marketing department should have those numbers. They should be selling that book and go pick up this book. 32 kids die.
I'm going to email Source Point right now.
or I mean, there will be a fan that will catalog that, I'm sure. So
check in a few months at the r/the damn cursed children Reddit.
I would love. You know what? I would love.
There's this great poster that has. There's this great poster that has every single Jason Voorhees kill, and it's kind of like stick figures, and it shows like one with an axe, one with a chainsaw, one with a boat, whatever. So yeah, you could have a big poster of that, of how the hundreds of children in the book have horrible things happen to them.
Yeah,
that could be merchandising.
Somebody walking by is going to be like, are those children's outlines? What's going on?
Now, Josh, I have a deep dive horror question because it sounds like you're a horror fan. Have you ever seen Who Can Kill a Child?
I have not.
Okay, because I just, as in researching, your book, and I wanted to see like other killer kids stuff, and I got pulled into this movie about a couple that goes to a village, and only kids are there, and something's going on. An older film? It's from 1971. And I love how I gotta see this movie. Time period from 1971 where we do a film about who could kill a kid, and in your book they're just punting them.
And see, Howard's a parent, so like he said, Howard was like, "Oh, I don't know if we should be doing this," and I'm a horrible horror nerd, so I'm like, "No, this is great. This is going to get some attention." Howard's the voice of reason.
I tried.
I'm also a parent, although she's like a teenager now. But when she was an infant, I'd say at least once a month, I would remember that Ray Bradbury story, The Small Assassin, which I think is from October Country. Yeah, and so it's if you've never read it, it's this Bradbury story about a young couple who have a baby, and there was something off with the baby. And I forget I think it's the mother who becomes convinced the baby's trying to kill them. And the father was like, "Oh, you're crazy. You're insane," or whatever. And then it just gets dark very quick. And there would be like, at least once a month in my head, I'd be like, she's so cute. Is she trying to kill me? Like it just, it would just pop into my head. So.
Wow. You must be a great father.
Years back, a friend of mine.
Exactly.
There's a friend of mine who a friend of mine had the kid was a baby at the time, like 2 or 3, and now she's like a kid. She seems like a grown up, but he was talking about stuff like that, about how kids are so creepy, and so he had a little camera so he could make sure she was like sleeping or whatever. And I was hanging out in the kitchen, and the camera it's like the most creepy Blair Witch like night goggle kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
So she was in the habit at the time of talking to her teddy bear, which I think is like a normal, natural thing. So there was this like adorable little 3-year-old blonde girl just under her breath going like, "Yeah, that's right, Teddy. We're going to get Daddy." Yeah. But it was like a positive thing. Like she was saying, "We're going to get him a present." But you would just hear these mumbles. And it was the creepiest thing of this little girl talking to an imaginary friend. It was just like 8 levels of creepy Twilight Zone horror story.
Give me that video so I can lay a John Carpenter theme underneath it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a quick break here so I can save all this recording, make sure it doesn't go away. All right, and we are back here with our guests, Howard Wong and Josh Stafford, talking about their book, Damned Cursed Children, that's coming out from Source Point Press. Now, we did have a question, and we were talking in the break a little bit about, Josh, you own it, the theater. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, it's pretty awesome. So I went to this movie theater called the Mayfair. I started in high school because I was from another part of town. All of my friends happened to be from the part of town around the theater, but we all crossed borders because we were going to an artsy high school. And so I love this place. It's just a great place. All the great movies of my life I saw for the first time there. And it's from 1932. It's a single screen and really an anomaly because sadly, there used to be one of these in every small and big town across North America. Now there are very few. So in 2009 or in 2008, it was going to be torn down and a drugstore, a chain drugstore here in Canada was going to be built on top of it. So a bunch of acquaintances of mine saved the place and it was amazing and a great thing. And soon after, a couple of people who helped them do this amicably went on to other endeavors and they needed somebody to come in. And so a guy I know, a filmmaker who is one of the co-owners, said, why don't we ask the Mayfair's biggest fan to be one of the co-owners? And I was just on the verge of becoming a grown-up and like buying a condo or something. And so instead I sunk all my money into an old movie theater and with no regrets. And so now we started January 1st, 2009. So that's how long we've been at it, this generation of owners. And if you go online, mayfairtheater.ca, you can do one of those walkthroughs and see the interior of the cinema if you go on Google, which is pretty cool. And yeah, it's super haunted. It's after hours. It's this big, scary theater. And every once in a while, I'll be locking up at the end of the night and realize I've forgotten to. There's a couple little things to unplug, little lights and stuff. And you'll over my shoulder, I will see that one of the lights is still on, and you just kind of sigh, and you're like, "Oh, okay." And you go back in, and it's never happened. But if a mouse ever ran by, or so, I just have a heart attack. I would just die. And we all have little weird stories that any skeptic could explain away. Of like, there was once where I went to close the door, and to me, it felt like somebody grabbed that door and pulled it open the other way. And it's just, even if you don't believe it all, just your lizard brain goes, well, that's scary. And you get the hell out of there. And I remember tweeting about it the next day, and just a lot of people were like, oh, no. So we've had Ghostbusters come in and they've confirmed as much as non-cool movie Ghostbusters can that there's ghosts in there. But yeah, and like everybody else, we're just on lockdown now, sadly, but we're hanging in there. And it's been the one silver lining for us this year is it's been a real It's a Wonderful Life kind of year because, we're not a restaurant, or even like we have friends in the neighborhood who is like a bookstore where you can do takeout or you can do delivery. We're a cinema. We can't really do anything like that. So it's just been, we've sold off name tags on seats. We've sold off messages on the marquee. We've booked rentals in advance. Media here in Canada has been great. We've been all over the place on that. So we're hanging in there. We'll be back whenever we can. Ottawa right now is back into super duper lockdown. And we were supposed to come back January 23rd, but we're not. So hopefully another month. Who's to say? But we're hanging in there and just looking forward to being back to screening movies. So yeah, it's a great place, and we're glad to be there.
Hey Josh, I also saw that you also do a Mayfair Theater podcast.
Yeah, and that happened years ago. We would chat, and I'd just be like, "This could just be a podcast." Podcasting, like once upon a time, it would have been, we would have had to, say if we were in the 80s doing this same thing, we would have to go to a radio station. We'd have to have all this professional equipment. We'd have to have professional technicians. And now someone like me, who's a little bit techie, but not really, with a laptop and a few microphones, we can do it. So we've passed 300 episodes. We have pretty decent ratings, really great fans. As people have rolled through the cinema, we've had some names that some people might recognize, like Greg Sestero and Lloyd Kaufman have been on the show, some friends of the Mayfair. And it's great too, just for like when a local filmmaker is doing something, and it's just, and like it's so funny. Like I listen to a few podcasts where the theme might be Star Trek or comic books, and they'll get complaints because 25 minutes out of the 30 minutes or 40 minutes is just them talking about whatever. We're totally guilty of that. Like we'll just talk about everything. And then at the 11th hour, be like, oh yeah, here's what's on this week. We kept doing it through lockdown and had really great response and these really great emails and texts of people saying that they were so happy we were still hanging in there and just updating people. So, I'll be recording another podcast for that tomorrow or Tuesday, and we're up to like 305 episodes, and it's fun. It's cool. It's a good way to communicate with everybody and stay in touch with everybody during these times.
For sure. I mean, that's why we look forward to doing this as well. And I've told the guys, like, look, even if no one's listening, like, we're gonna keep putting out the podcast because I just have a good time. Luckily, there are people listening and following. So,
hello, Alaska.
That's right.
Hello. By the way, I did confirm my friend in Alaska is not our listener in Alaska. So just for those audience members who've been on the edge of their seat wondering.
Well, Josh, why isn't he our listener? Get on that. Come on.
Yeah.
He added it when I saw him last, so it's all good.
Please double our Alaska audience.
I will in one fell swoop.
It's funny to look at the metrics sometimes. I guess we have a few quick kind of rapid fire style questions about comics in general. Can you guys tell us about your first comic or the first comic that kind of really sticks to your head as like, oh shit, this is comics?
Wow, I can actually. I can't remember what grade it was though. This is bad. My first comic that I used money to buy. Sounds hilarious for me to say that out loud. You get gifts from uncles and aunts and whatnot. It wasn't theatery. Don't worry about that. But it was actually. I think what grade was I in? 3, 4, I think, something like that. When the Scholastic gives you that order sheet in your school, it's like, I don't. It's like I don't want to read another book. And then on the sheet, for some reason, it had a Tarzan comic, and I was like, my mom would never know. I remember I ticked it. I'm like, can I get this book? Because it's Scholastic, so it's all books.
Yeah.
All right, here's the money, blah, blah, blah. And then, you wait for, I don't know how it was, a month or whatever it was. And then, on your desk is your book, magically by, the Scholastic elves, whatever. And everyone has a book, and I have the giant size. I don't have it anymore, I think, but it's about this big, and I can't remember who did it in the cover, but it had Tarzan and the ape. I think he was wielding a dagger. Actually, it was like a pretty violent thing for Scholastic to have ordered. But that thing enthralled. I read that thing to death to the point where I remember the covers falling off, and I tried fixing it, which was a stupid thing to do when you're a kid, but I tried fixing it, so that was a very awful thing to do. That was my very first comic, and I didn't know that was a thing. I thought that was because my dad's not a comic book reader. He read comic books when he was in Hong Kong, so to a completely different format. I can it's like a whole different thing. It's a really interesting thing back in the day then. But this was my first real comic in my hands where I owned. And my mother was really upset to school, but I was like, I read to death. And after that, I didn't really buy comics. I wasn't really allowed to. But then when they got to when you get to the age where you can ride your bike with your friends to the corner store, you can see in Josh's frame there the spinner rack. The spinner rack was my best friend because I was skinny enough and small enough that the owner couldn't see me read books. You sort of like read it, and then it was looking at you. You sort of slide it down, and you're looking at it's like how long can it take you to choose a bag of chips? But me, an hour. But so that's how I would read my comics when I was as a kid. But then I remember buying a Captain America comic book with Blue Streak when they redesigned his outfit to be roller skates and a gas mask or something. And I think he died. The reason why I picked it up because he actually gets shot with a Uzi and dies or something. I think it was him or something. Somebody dies in that issue, but it was a horrible death because it was like I remember the panel was like a taxi cab. The taxi cab driver had an Uzi to the seat behind, behind him like this. And the guy behind him shot to death. I was like, what the hell? And I bought that issue with my money, which I should buy.
That's wild. I really expected a direct market store, but you went through Scholastic, you went through Spinner Rack. So,
Yep.
I mean, really older traditional type comic exposure.
Yeah, I mean that's where I got it. And now, Mag Magazine was always in my life too. But then I started collecting during the Image days when I had, well, AKA my own money because I was in high school, so I was like doing a part-time job. So I started doing that because I saw the production value when friends brought them in school, and they're completely different from what I remember as comic books growing up. And I was like, that's a comic book? Can I read that? It's like, no. Well, can I look at it when you read it? He was like, I get it. I get it, right? So after that, I'm like, I'm going to buy some of these and check them out because, it's really hard when you don't collect comics and you try to get into comic books and you don't understand how it works. Like if you go to someone, this is issue 300 of whatever title, but it's a new story, so you can jump on here. But what happened to the other 300? You can't afford that, one, for one, and two, don't worry about those stories. You get them in trades. Where are trades? And then you go there from the graphic novels, and it's a learning curve for people, right? So I learned all this pre-internet.
Yeah.
So when you do that, when you're an introvert nerd, you don't go, excuse me. And you're like, oh shit, I have to ask a question like in the public now instead of school. So I literally learned about comic books through friends who collected comic books, and unfortunately for me, their fathers collected comic books. So I mean, I got to see. I didn't get to touch. I got to see the cover of the first Superman comic book, but his dad didn't have the comic. He had the cover of it framed up and stuff. He's like, "Check this out." I'm like, "This is the first Super." Like, did you ever? Okay, it's for a case in point, you don't say these words when someone's holding something expensive in your hand. He shoved it in my hands like, "This is the first Superman comic book. Don't drop it. My dad will kill you." So he's like, "It's in your hands, right?" But now you're like shaking. You're like, "Oh shit!" So I had that friend who did that. He actually showed me and let me read the first appearance of Wolverine ever. So I had really good friends or bad friends, I guess, in a way, who got me into this world. I'm like, and I'm still in it. They left a long time ago, and I'm like still in it. It's like, you start writing comic books. I'm like, yeah, it's all your fault, but it's cool. You're an investment banker now, but it's all good. So that's my beginning was really slow, and then in high school I got into it. But I like the fact that I got into it on my own in a way because I wasn't led like you must read these things. It's like music, you get listen to these albums or CDs when you're younger or whatever. I sort of just figured it out on my own, and therefore my tastes and my desires of reading certain stories were my own. So it became like every comic book I bought since day one was my own choice. It wasn't like because Bob told me that I must buy and read these things. So it's a really different journey than most people, I think. But you, Josh, I actually never asked you that. I don't even know your story into comics.
I cheated and I just looked on my phone while you were talking because I remember it's a Fantastic Four comic where they're fighting these giant, weird, headless purple monsters in the snow. So that's what I just Googled, and we live in a time of wonder because that's Fantastic Four 221.
That is amazing.
I Googled Fantastic Four snow purple monsters and I managed to find this.
Right, there's a story for you to read for the FF.
Yeah. The cover is just this like winged purple monster with no head, and Mr. Fantastic stretching around a purple monster, and the Thing getting beat up by one. So it's the very romanticized comic nerd story of my dad brought me back this comic. I was 4 years old, and I remember just looking at it and being like this is amazing, and like flipping through the book 1,000 times. And so like I was in like, and I'm not really a collector, but I'm a reader, and it's never going to stop. Like the same way that I'm never going to stop watching TV or movies or eating. Like comics are forever for me. So when I was a kid, both my parents weren't the kinds who were opposed to such things, and I've been told that I started uh, reading very early, and it was thanks to comic books. Like I got into reading very, very early and had good grades in kindergarten and grade school because of that, because I learned all these big, weird words from comic books. But so when I was a little kid, that era of the 80s, the heyday, I kind of liked weirder stuff too. My favorite stuff is Atari Force, Captain Carrot, and inexplicably Dazzler. I really like Dazzler.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I read all the other normal stuff too, like Fantastic Four and Spider-Man. But if someone says what was your influence, it was weird stuff like that. And creators I still kind of follow. I mean, like Atari Force was drawn by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, who's maybe the greatest ever.
Yeah.
And in that era, like I was with the math on this, like I was like 10 when Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, I think, and Dark Knight Returns. I read that when I was way too young, and the Mirage Comics Ninja Turtles, I think, was like 87 or so. So
Yeah.
that's my wheelhouse. That's all my stuff right there. And we had really good shops in Ottawa, so I was able to get kind of some, like, nothing too crazy, but just there was independent books and other funny animal books and stuff like that. And I was still reading the super mainstream stuff like G.I. Joe and Transformers, but I got into Ninja Turtles at a fairly young age, and if I cared about such things, have some pretty valuable first printings of not number 1 or anything, but like number 4 and 5 up kind of stuff. So, but yeah, and I've been reading ever since. Like I just read everything. Howard and I got asked to do our top 10 list for another nerd site. And oh my God, it was the hardest assignment I've ever done. It took me forever to just kind of whittle down graphic novels or story arcs that are my favorite. And if I did the same assignment 6 weeks from now, it would look different. I'd think of other things.
Right. Yep.
I don't believe you finished it. I'm still working on it. I sent him my top.
Oh my God.
Here's my top 20. He's like, no, you need 10. I'm like, I know. I'll try. And my fear was like, can you comment on why? I'm like, no, I can't. I shouldn't. I should. But oh man, I don't know how you did it. Because I started backtracking books and stuff like that. That like mentioned like the TMNT stuff. Because you start picking up stuff when you start. It sounds weird when you have like more money. You spend more money on comics.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I was like buying stuff catching up and stuff. So my collection exploded. So, but then this is interesting. I stopped when I married my wife. That's kind of funny. I sort of like at that point I'm like, I should stop doing this because we need money to for mortgage and grown up stuff. But then she saw that I wasn't happy and she asked me, what did I do? I'm like, I bought comics. It's like, you bought comics? Yeah, those boxes in the basement that I never opened. Those are all comics. That whole wall there, that's like comics. I'm sorry, that's what it is. I'm not gonna throw them out. And then she's like, do that and do whatever doing something make you happy. Work is making you depressed. And I started writing from that point. I also wrote as well during that time because she asked me to do that. So
keep that woman.
Yeah. I mean, hey, she had a collection of Dragon Ball, like she's from Hong Kong, but she had like the Chinese version, like the legit translated version of the Dragon Ball, like the whole series and stuff. At one point when I was dating her, and then I noticed when I went to her apartment once when I visited her because I was overseas, like, you're missing a couple of issues. Like, yeah, I have some asshole friends who never get back. So these like little empty slots here and there, like I'm like,
yeah.
So it's sort of like, wow, you're just as big as a nerd as I am. That's just good. if it bothers you, that's good. And the fact that you didn't squeeze them, usually squeeze the shelf up and then whatever. But she left them there, so you just know that when that friend or friends come visit, you point to the hole.
Yep.
So she was that. That was awesome. I was like, wow, okay, we're gonna keep dating now for sure.
She sounds like a keeper. Especially with anybody that reads Dragon Ball is great in my book.
Oh yeah, I talking about being bad father and stuff. I try to show Dragon Ball to my kids. They're teens, they're young teens. I forgot about the certain parts of the Dragon Ball that are not meant not really not great for kids to see. And I was like, oh yeah.
Wait, are you trying to show them original Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z?
The first Dragon Ball.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm rereading the manga for 2021. Like that was one of the things I wanted to do.
Wow, that's a long read, man.
Yeah, so I just started. I know Kyle had a question too, so I'll let him jump on.
Yeah, so that's a Guy King figure behind you, right, Howard?
Yes, it is. The big giant ass one.
Yeah. Well, are you a huge fan? I mean, and I know you did Full Metal Ghost, but are you a huge mech fan also, or?
Yeah. Well, the interview I had with backtrack real quick. When 3-0, I know there's an owner of 3-0. I did work with him. He asked me one day to come visit him when I was visiting Hong Kong. But come over and visit the warehouse and the studio and blah. I want to hang out and stuff. So his studio and warehouse is in like a warehouse district of Hong Kong. So the air conditioning is shit and it's really hot. So he literally dresses. I dressed the same way he dressed. So I was in sandals, shorts, like surfing shorts, and a t-shirt. You open the door, it's like, yeah, you're not in that now, and these guys are in suits, and I don't know who they are. So what's going on here? Oh, hi Howard, great you're here. These guys are from Bandai. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were meeting. No, you're part of this. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's how I found out about the Full Metal Ghost project, and that was like one of those. I'm not going to get this job because of all these things against. First, I'm dressed like a bum for one. And first, I'm sweating because August Hong Kong, and I smell for sure. I can smell myself. Like, oh, this is bad. This is all bad. And they put up the prototype up, and I'm like, "What do you think of this?" Well, the legs look like a ripoff of Gundam. Actually, the person who designed Gundam designed this. Like, oh, that's great. It's like, oh no, this is like I'm not going to get, and I'm gonna get ostracized by the guy I do know. Great. And then throughout all the questions, one question, there's a person who was on the phone who was speaking Japanese and got translated at the meeting. They never told me who it was.
Oh no.
To the end. So there was one of the questions like, "What do you know about giant robots?" I'm like, "I grew up watching them every day after school. I would literally run away from my friends back home to watch it, and I know exactly what channel, what time, because we used to be the old school TV boxes. And I had the rabbit ears. In Toronto, was Channel 3 Global, and they broadcasted them the English translations of what I said, Gotcha Man, which is what I learned later on what it was called, but Battle Planets.
Like over here we had Star Blazers.
Yes, Star Blazers is awesome. Yes, so I watched all that, but in my mind, even though I'm Asian, I didn't know there were anime. I just saw them as cartoons. So Gundam was never in my wheelhouse during that time. So giant robots, when I asked me about giant robots, they didn't think I was going to go that far back. Things beyond my, their thoughts. So I was like, well, there's Grandizer, Voltron, the first one, not the new one, and so forth and so on. They're like, do you know about this? And I start kind of recollect some episodes, but I'm like, these are their powers and why they're cool. I always found it weird that to have that for Professor Grandizer when he did that stupid spin in this chair when he's going from one side to the robot, and I'm like, is that really like? And I guess really because you guys make toys, I want to ask this dumb question right now. It might get me fired. I don't care. Is that because as a kids we always had this debate? Did you just go through his butthole and then sort of spun in the middle in the head? Because that's what it looked like, right? If you look at it, it's like he's literally coming from the back end and he's like spinning in the middle and then into the head. I'm like, then the only far back he can go is his foot. But it's not really his foot. That's where the rockets are. So it must be his butt. I mean, that's as a kid, that's what you thought. So for Guy King here, I actually have more stuff, but I don't pull them out really often. So I bought this a long time ago. This is the No Face Guy King, which is really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, this Guy King, I don't know if I can. Let's see if I can. You know what? I'm going to move the camera. It might be easier. This is a huge bad boy. It's about almost like a foot tall.
Looks very cool.
Yeah. Oh wow!
Damn.
Yeah, no, I grabbed this from my room, but I have the Master Grade F91 Gundam model, which I still haven't put together yet.
I'm an idiot because I don't open my boxes, so this is like something I picked up for fun.
The F1J Valkyrie from Macross.
Macross, and then here we called it Robotech. I didn't know that.
I thought she was the Battle Pod version of that figure.
Nice. The funny thing is, once you watch Macross, you're like, wow, they redrew everything. And they even drew out the parts that technically they didn't have to redraw. And people didn't realize, like there's certain scenes where they didn't trace it because they can't trace certain angles of the skirt. And, it's just weird to say that one out loud, but that's what they did. They had to redraw.
Yeah.
So I was recounting all these things growing up, from like Robotech, Grandizer, Guy King, and things like that. And they're like, so you know all this? I'm like, I grew up watching this stuff. These were my cartoons, plus the other stuff I watched. And like, why do you know this? And I'm like, because we watched it. But then I had to explain, like, Gotcha Man was edited big time over there because you guys had the violent versions. What do you mean? You know that boomerang when the boomerang goes by and it hits people in the face? Yeah, it cuts to the next scene. It's like, oh no, they die. Like, It's a kid, a dumb kid. You don't realize a bladed boomerang hitting people in their faces would do something.
Yeah.
but you don't ever see it, right? So it was one of those weird conversations where we basically geeked out about 60, 70 robots for a while. And then the person on the phone was from Japan. He paused. He clapped his hands, and I'm like, so he's like, and then he asked the question, do you know Gundam? I'm like, I know enough about it. I have a lot of friends who are big fans. I'm not crazy about the stuff after the first story arc because it's sort of like a repeat of everything. I love the designs and stuff, but it's sort of like they are the archetype characters all same, in every story, right? So I'm kind of getting like the point where I'm in the age where I'm like, I want more. They were going to do a military thing, do it well, do it right. And then it was a big lull, and then they told me who it was on the phone. It was Kuno-san, the guy who designed Gundam and stuff like that.
Wow.
Because I nerded out, and I you know what? Because at that point I'm like, I'm not gonna get this job. I'm sweating. I'm stinking. I offended the guy who designed this thing. I'm like, I'm not gonna get this. I'm just gonna nerd out and have fun. I was here to hang out with this guy anyways, so I nerded out, and I got the job because of that, pretty much. Because the second part of that was, could you write a story right now? And they rolled out the whiteboard, and I sort of drafted out a quick story. And I had an ending technically, but I didn't write it down because it was no contract yet. So I was like, this is my idea for now. And can obviously change this because I just made this on the fly. Is that cool? And they're like, that's good enough. We'll work with you. Here's a contract. Read it. Send it back to us when you're done, and so forth. So I mean, that's how it came about. How I got to work on with Bandai and guys. And holy shit, man, I saw stuff at the Bandai offices. And the Bandai offices in Hong Kong. My God, stuff they have in there in the waiting room is evil because you sit there because you're a geek. You can't sit. You want to walk and look and gawk because they have everything done.
I can
I mean,
imagine.
I won't mention which robot figures, but they have ones that are like at least 2 feet long, like lengthwise with the wings and stuff.
Wow.
Have them all lit up and posed, and you're like, son of a bitch! Like all the stuff is here. They had, Mangzer Z. It had all opened up, and it's like, I want to steal this shit. And then you have the meeting worse because like go to my office because they're going to need the meeting room. I'm like, okay, so I'm like going into the Asia. I think that's his name. What his title was. He was like the creative director of all of Asia at that time. So I go into his office and I see all a bunch of stuff. Of course, it's toys, right? But the one that catches my eye was. Let's see if I have his figure. This is a funny thing. I told him the story about this. So this guy's missing something he rides on.
Akira.
Right. So his giant bike that was like this wide. It's about a foot or so in length. I'm like, is that what I think it is? Like, oh yeah. And he pops it in my hands. Like, I designed that. I'm like, that's really cool. It's the first toy ever made, for it. And then I had to talk to Otomo and get his approval. It was my first toy I designed. I'm like, I'm going to steal this now. Now, I have a North American, it's North American joking, aspect of why I said, obviously. He's from Japan, so that wasn't funny. So, he's like, he looked at me, I'm like, no, I am going to steal this now. I'm going to run away. No one's going to tackle me. No one's going to knock me down because this will break, right? So I'm going to run now. And he looked at me like, okay, here, I know you're about to call security, so I get it back to him. It's like, he paused. He thought about it. I'm like, I'm joking. I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't mean to do that. It's fun today. I may have one here. I got this from him actually as a gift. The Star Wars Samurai. You know. So
that is cool. Wow.
So yeah, it's actually really well done.
Yeah, those are very cool.
Cool. So the joking thing you see here, the chest plate here, right? There's other ones where they have. This one has them. No, this one doesn't have it. So some of the chest plates, if you know your samurai's history, the armor, the chest plates for samurai and the meepos and stuff, they honor the Buddha. They use the Buddha to protect themselves. They would have it on their armor and stuff. So one of the prototypes had nipples on it because it's the Buddha, right?
Yeah.
And I like, hey, how come that one has nipples? And he looked at it. As I said, I was just trying to. Cause the meeting was long. We were just joking and having fun. He looked at it. It's like, yeah. And he messaged the designer in Japan why these things have nipples. And he had this long conversation, like through this, in Japanese in the text. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't mean it. I was just horsing around here, and I'm like, can I explain why? 'Cause I know why. I'm so sorry, and I explain why, and then the designer is like, yeah, exactly. This is like because it's based on that. And because they were talking about, at that point, they explained to me they were talking about redoing it and taking off the nipples and so forth, so they wouldn't offend people. And I'm like, this is Japanese culture and history. It makes sense. That's why it's there. I was just being me. I'm sorry again, but I am going to steal that bike later. So, so that's the kind of meetings I had. And then by the second one, they figured out I was being funny and realized it, and they were okay with it. So they'd literally bring people from different departments who did not understand that side of comedy to watch them squirm and shit. But I mean, I said you see all the product line, like they show everything in their wall of because as you walk in, it's just display after display of stuff. So it's insane. So I didn't tell anyone this, but I may have stolen the visitor badge, maybe, possibly, because I might have walked out accidentally still on. You never know.
Should have taken the bike.
Yeah, pens and coasters and anything that says Benda or like anything on it.
Yeah, mine, right? But yeah, I know that bike. I really wanted that bike. I wouldn't lie. I really
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if soon Howard and Kyle start a Gundam Meg podcast.
Easy. It's easy to do because it's a rabbit hole where you jump in.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I do want to start wrapping up because we've taken up enough of your time. And we normally like to do and I should have given you guys. I always do this. I never give anybody a heads up about the question of the day. But I think I like the response I get better if it's just like fresh and quick snap. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna think about the question of the day. In the meanwhile, we'll have Howard and Josh tell us, where we can find them and all this stuff if they have any projects coming up. But the question of the day is gonna be, what comic book page lives in your head rent free? So just let's all think about that. In the meanwhile, I know, and I'm putting our guests on the spot because I want them to talk while they think about the comic. But this, that's
Wait, are you talking about our own comic or any comic?
You know what? Any comic you want. So, in the meanwhile, can you guys tell us projects that are coming up, where people can find you on the internet? How do they get more Josh and Howard good comic book stuff?
Josh, want to start up?
Sure. My Facebook is. I forgot this because I haven't done it didn't set it up. I set it up so long ago, but my Facebook is under Bat Turtle, BATTURTLE, and that's just a nerd name I've used on video games forever. And I wasn't quick enough to get it on Instagram, so my Instagram is BatTurtle_Mayfair. And I don't really have a Twitter account, but I'm on there undercover because I do the social media for us. So Mayfair Theater is where I'm on for Twitter. And it's good because I know Twitter gets a lot of complaints, but I've managed to curate my feed down to just movie and comic nerds. So that's all I hear on Twitter, and that's about it. In terms of projects, Damn Cursed Children's coming out soon, of course. January 27th is the first issue, easily available if you have phone or email or social media or local comic store, and just tell them that it's in previews and from Source Point Press. By crazy chain of events, this year was very productive for me despite it being this horrible pandemic. So I'm also have a story in a anthology from Marcosia, a publisher named Marcosia from the UK. It's called Flip Volume 2, and that's available on Amazon and bookstores and comic stores. And then I got to write an episode of DC Superheroes Girls, and that's available to watch on Facebook. It's an amazing little show. These are little 3-minute episodes, and mine's called #FlashForwardFlashback, and it's a fun little 3-minute flash story about him trying to get to school on time. And that, talk about nerd dream come true. That if you would have told 5-year-old me that I got to write a Flash episode, that's and it got 3 million hits, and I don't make that much money off of it, I promise you. So
that is awesome though.
Thanks, Warner.
Yeah,
Brothers.
That's super fun. Yeah.
And to feed off of that, 3 million, right? Okay, I don't have 3 million.
3 million.
Thank you. Let me think. You can find me on my blog, howard-wong.blogspot.com. On Instagram, it's at the real Howard Wong. Twitter is at Howard Wong and the number 1. And everything else I can't remember, so look at my blog because I don't really message myself that often. What I have coming out in the future, I do have a possible one-shot that deals with samurai and horror with SourcePoint Press. We're still in discussions and talking about it. Probably later on in the year, possibly. We'll see, depending on how things go. As well as for other projects. Personally, I am. I'm helping to edit a amazing graphic novel from Fu Richardson, The Book of Myrrh, which is like her personal fantastical autobiography kind of thing. Cool. Which is basically where I'm focusing my time right now, because it's an amazing journey, and it's a lot of beautiful art. Oh my god! If I could show you the artwork, the artwork's pretty amazing. And what else am I working on? I'm just doing that, and some projects for clients and stuff like that. And I'm actually looking for work right now because some projects have paused because of the pandemic and stuff like that. It happens; it's normal, and I'm not going to fault anybody about it because it's just a normal thing. So, if anyone's looking for a writer or anything like that, or someone to edit, I am available for that as well. Um, where else can you find me? That's about it. Oh, I also do workshops too. I should mention that. So I have a workshop thing called Unlocking the Secrets of Creating Comic Books, and I've been doing workshops with different organizations and private organizations. Basically, it's like for really for kids or adults who want to jump into it. So it's like really for beginners, going how do I begin to make my own comic book? We basically do a quick. We have a quick version of that workshop where we just bang on every single major peak that you should get into your repertoire for creating comic book. We also have a longer version where we work with different artists to show you how to go from idea to story script to layouts, because art is different. Art is basically your personal way of expressing what you want to draw. So we don't deal with the art because that you can do on your own, but everything else we show you the ropes. So that's something else I've been doing that I've been for some reason this year, 2020 and the beginning of this year, I've been doing a lot of, which is pretty cool, and all virtually. So it doesn't have to be in person. It's kind of hard to do in person now. So I always had fun doing that as well. So I think that's what I'm doing to keep myself busy and out of trouble, besides reading more comic books and stuff. And as Jeff mentioned, definitely you can pick up Damn Cursed Children. Issues 1 to 3 are in previews. Issue 4 is coming out in previews next month. Off to your local comic book shops, and just yell really loud in the phone, "I want Damn Cursed Children." The louder you scream, the faster you come. I bet, maybe, I don't know. You have to find out by screaming. And you can also go to, I think, Comixology when it launches, when it hits the stands, when the books hits the stands. You can go to Comixology to order them if you want digital, or go to the SourcePoint Press website to order them digitally and or physical if you have no comic book shops near you as well. So about the question. That question was, can you repeat the question?
I guess it was what panel image lives rent free inside your head?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. Sorry, good.
I can't tell. This is the awful part. I can't remember the issue number, but it was a series called Small Gods from Image Comics a million years ago. Well, that makes me feel older now. Not that long ago. Um, and they were asking their fans to send in photos so they could draw them in the background. So I sent in a photo of myself, my wife, and we're in there twice, I think. And I actually bought that page from the artist. And
Cool.
it sounds so bad. It's in storage somewhere in the basement because I don't place to hang it out yet. So that one sticks in my mind because it's so funny. It's so weird. It's like before we had kids, and before we had kids, we decided to travel as far as we can and do some dumb shit that we wouldn't have to do with kids for a long time. So we went to Australia and New Zealand. That's what we did. So so I had the photo of us standing there in New Zealand, and we were in Small God. So it's really interesting that he did that, and I bought that page, and I did it quickly. This is the best part. The reason why it stands in my head because I bought it quickly enough before some other people bought that same page because there's other people who were on the same page. So when I found out, he's like, "I'm going to draw you. Can I buy the page?" So, like back in the image comics board days, I'm like, boom, instantly my message was, "Can I buy the page?" She's like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to sell it. I don't care. I'm going to buy the page." That's it. I own it, and the other fans are like, they couldn't buy it because I totally asked right at the beginning, so that's why it stands out in my head.
Very cool. If anybody needs more time, I can go first, unless you guys are ready.
Go for it.
Well, mine is, and it's a little bit timely. It's from House of M, number 7. When Wanda says no more beans, and you get the whole spread of everything lighting up, and then you just see kind of everything disappearing. That one, like, all the time. It's up there just hanging out.
And no spoilies, but WandaVision is so good.
Oh, yes.
It's really,
it's interesting.
I think going to be something. It's going to be something. And I feel sorry for non-nerds who watch that first episode and are like, why the hell is it a laugh track black and white Marvel show? They must be so confused right now. But I really think it's going to be something special. I think this show is going to be pretty cool.
I agree.
I guess mine would be the one that I have here. Y'all can't see that 141 X-Men cover because that's one I have tattooed. So I will always carry that one.
Great. Either Josh or Kyle.
Either Josh.
Either Josh.
Either Josh. Yeah, Josh Stafford, please. If you're ready, go ahead.
Yeah, if covers count, the first thing that comes to mind is the cover of Justice League #1 from the mid 80s by Kevin Maguire. That series is really big to me. A lot of the characters are my favorites. And you know how people have like their James Bond or their Doctor Who? Like that's my Justice League of that DC almost kind of doing the Marvel thing. It got a little bit more real world. It was characters getting paid like it was their job. And although it still had like big fantastical things, it really brought a humanity to the DC universe. And I have a Blue Beetle tattoo, and yeah, I love that book a lot. And for a cover, it's been redone by Kevin Maguire 100 times and redone by other artists 100 times. And it's just this simple, iconic cover that just has the characters, and you just look at it and you're like, this is going to be different than the Justice League that was 2 years ago compared to now. So yeah, I love that cover a lot.
Josh, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I got mine. Although Josh Stafford's pick is one that I would almost have chosen, but mine is the very first page of Flies on the Ceiling by Jaime Hernandez from Love and Rockets. It just, this one page, which is this one here, does just an amazing job of setting up the story with basically no dialogue, no text. It's just this series of kind of seemingly not connected panels that when you take them in total sets up what's to come. It's a great page. And
I really expected a Dave Stewart page.
I sat here just stewing because I was like, what? I mean, it almost was a Fantastic Four or a Spider-Man page. Like, I just try to think of the ones that are just in my head, like they kind of embedded themselves in the cerebellum, you know, and that's the one that kind of came to mind. So,
can the panel be based on something that has with the text?
It can be whatever you want, Kyle.
Okay, so this probably won't be a surprise for most of you, but there is one that really grabbed the series for me. Starman, Jack Knight, Starman, issue #6. It's the first time he goes back and he's seen his brother, and his brother's all Jack and everybody else is in gray, but then his brother's in color. And there's a scene where basically David tells Jack that he's been envious of Jack the whole time, and it's just him leaning back against one of the gravestones, saying, "You're the one who found this Japanese catalog for Levi Strauss jeans and decided to learn Japanese to read it. You're the one who decided to go out and learn judo. You're the one who basically loved Jerry Lewis movies and didn't care about anybody. You did the whole art thing." It was that time that made me realize that like Jack isn't just in love with the past. It was anytime any of those images were always when Jack, like in the first issue, when he's like losing his whole story and he's going through the list of all the stuff that he's losing. But David saying what kind of individual Jack was made me realize how much I could relate to that book, and made me realize it's okay to be a weirdo, and I don't care about it. You learn what kind of person Jack was going to be for the rest of the series.
Yeah.
Okay, Kyle wins.
That is very good.
I like the whole series, but that one image cemented that series for me, and just because it described, it's where I felt like I could relate to the character.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about comics. Like when they give you feelings like that, like all that stuff we just kind of talked about. Like, well, I think that's our show for today. I want to thank our guest again, Mr. Howard.
Yeah,
Wong,
thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
joining
Yeah.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting us read the book in advance. We will.
Thank you.
We'll be doing a review and posting it on our site.
Cool.
But yeah, please go pick up the book. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. Talk about a few pages with no writing, with no dialogue, right? Yeah,
It's got creepy kids. I mean, that's really all you need to know, and they're armies of them coming at you.
Yeah, and I hope that this is also kind of our entry point into more source point stuff, because it's a publisher that I really was not familiar with until I started messaging Howard on Twitter and stuff about setting this up. I also got to say, you two, we don't have a lot of guests, but you guys have the coolest backgrounds. Like,
Yeah.
set up behind you.
Your
It's
office spaces, yeah.
some of the coolest we've seen here. So that's very cool.
You guys are reading stuff too, man. Seriously, I can see it's only a bit of it what you're showing, and I know that bookshelf wraps around. So
Yeah. Well, once again, check us out on Twitter at Next Issue Pod. You can find each of our Twitters on the show notes. You can also find how to check out our guests and their stuff. It will be on our show notes as well. Don't forget to subscribe, review, give us a 5-star review. I hear it helps. I don't know. I haven't had to look at those metrics in a while.
Well, now we have 2 listeners in Alaska. Thanks.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we got some fun stuff coming up for 2021. We're kind of relaunching, and I'm really glad that our season premiere, as I'm calling it, it's a big one. It's got guests, and I know it's outside of the normal format, but I really enjoy the conversation. So thanks everyone. Take care and keep reading comics.
Will do.
Hail Bebo.
Bebo loves you.
Thanks for joining us. You can find Next Issue on Twitter at Next Issue Pod, on Twitch at Next Issue, and on Facebook at Next Issue Podcast. You can find Clay on Twitter at Clay_Harrison, Kyle at Kylepedia, Adrian at Adrian_Harry, Daniel at Echo Spider, and Josh at Cosmosis. Hail Bebo.